Welcome to another Forte growth episode where we interview people doing awesome things online. We go over their successes, insights, and any failures to keep you motivated and inspired. Sit back. Let's go.
All right, welcome to the Forte Growth Podcast. Get all of your SEO services, PR, everything from Forte Analytica SEO agency. But today we had Cyrus Shepard, a quality rater. So he is the guy that comes to your site and basically tells you if your website's shit or not. And we dive into, the whole podcast is just full of nuggets. It's an hour and 10 minutes of straight nuggets to help you make your site bulletproof to Google updates. We dive into his analysis of the helpful content update as a quality rater, what people are missing, what he sees as essentially a bad website, bad user experience, how to make it better. I mean, we go through so many different questions that are probably all at the top of your mind that you need to listen to this whole podcast because, it's jam-packed. And I'm not going to share too much else before this. Because once you get into the podcast, you'll just be hooked and you're going to go all the way through it. And hopefully you can make some of these changes to your own site. Sit back and enjoy. All right, welcome to the Forte Growth Podcast, home of the Forte Analytica SEO agency. We can get all your links, PR, everything done. Just hit Gareth up on Twitter, Gareth Boyd, you'll find him. But today we have Cyrus Shepard. Welcome, Cyrus.
Hey, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. I think most people may have come across you from the Niche Pursuits podcast you did not too long ago with your internal link case study. But I want to start somewhere else with this podcast, and we're just going to go straight into it. You used to be a Google quality rater, what do they call it? Guideline.
There's different names for it. In the industry, we generally say Google quality rater, but I don't officially work for Google, and I'm still doing it, actually. Yeah, so my official title is something like search engine evaluator or something like that. Because Google contracts the job out to these third-party companies, and they all have different names for it. They never say the word Google, but that's what you're doing.
Not perfect. All right, this will be good. So let's set the scene first. What is the job description of a Google quality rater? So what is it that you essentially do? And then we can dive into a few of the questions that I've got here.
Yeah. Now, before we say anything, I need to be very careful that I don't officially work for Google. I'm not supposed. There's certain things I'm not supposed to talk about. This is not official advice because I don't want to get sued or fired. But so the job description is quality raters in general evaluate search results or websites. So you'll often get presented with, two different sets of search results and a query, and you'll go through these extensive scorecards, or you'll be presented with, just a query and a website, and you'll grade the website. And there's also experimental features that you'll sometimes evaluate, such as AI results or things like that. So a lot of experimental features that the public doesn't always see.
So the search engine will give you the things to look at versus you going out and trying to find quote unquote problems.
Right, exactly. So you're given everything. You generally have your mobile phone. Most evaluations take place on mobile. So you're looking at your computer and there's a button you press and your phone loads up with certain search results and you go through. And, it's quite an extensive process. Everything's on a timer. Each task takes a certain amount of time. Everything's tracked to the minute. It can be a tedious job, to be honest.
No, it sounds like it. Oh, we got Gareth joining us there, but we'll continue on as we're going. But does that mean when they're sending you the things to rate, are they sending you, for example, one of the things like look at this one website or look at this one thing, or is it more of a group of things?
It's usually a group. When you're rating websites, you're usually rating them in blocks, and you generally have two sets of results, and so you have to rate all the results on the left side, all the results on the right side, and look at each individual website. It can take a while, especially if you're doing reputation research, which you're often asked to do. So you're looking at, reviews of the site, you're Googling information about the site, things like that.
Okay. Man, I've got so many questions here. I'm just trying to figure out which way we're going to take this. But let's start with the helpful content update. I think this will be most useful for most people. Then I've got a bunch of questions from different people actually in here all around, I guess, quality rating. But around the helpful content update, what have you seen so far with sites that have been quote unquote hit and sites that haven't been?
Yeah, so really good question and really interesting. So when the HCU hit and people started reaching out or tagging me on, social media, what happened to this site, or contact me during consulting, there's two main things that I saw. And one is just a lack, sites that got hit often lack, I hate to criticize any one site, but to be blunt, there's originality, effort, and speed that, users can get their answers. So sites that got hit often had stock photos, or they just weren't putting in the extra effort. But one thing I've seen more than any other is ads, because as Glenn Gabe pointed out on social media, the HCU update was also a UX update that Google announced. And heavy ad sites, I've seen a lot of Mediavine sites with auto-loading videos playing in the footer. Anything that blocks the content seem to be susceptible to getting hit on this last update. So those were the big red flags for me.
Interesting. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff I want to ask further in there. But okay, you talked about originality and effort. You mentioned stock photos, but how else are you judging originality and effort into a website?
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting thing about being a quality rater is you sort of, for me personally, I've always been thinking as a very analytical SEO, thinking in terms of ranking factors and, all that stuff. But working as a quality rater, I had to throw all that aside, and I'm just looking at it like a user. Like, okay, I'm looking to buy tennis shoes. What's this site going to give me as a user? Do I actually want to buy tennis shoes from this site? I think as a user, we can all look at a site and say, oh, this looks like every other site, that I look at on the internet. This looks like something they may have paid a writer to put this together, but how much effort did they really put in? Did they go out and take photographs of the product? Are there custom illustrations? Did they put everything into a graph or table format? How quickly can I get my answer? So as a user, you start to get a kind of a sense for how much effort they put in and how are they showing off their expertise and distinguishing themselves from every other site on the internet. And when you're just looking at sites over and over and over and over again, you start to look for those things. What's setting this site apart from everybody else? And I'm going to harp on this a little bit. I think as SEOs, we've trained ourselves in these processes. We're going to get a content brief. We're going to hire a writer. We're going to produce this content, but we've stopped asking to a certain extent, what are we doing above and beyond everybody else? And I think Google is starting to attune themselves to that. And if you're producing cookie cutter content, the bar is being raised more and more as to what you can get away with.
Yeah, I think us as website owners and even users, I think most people know exactly what you're saying around, you go to a site and you go, this just looks like a cookie cutter affiliate site. And I think most people know kind of common sense when they look at a site, what isn't good and what is good.
And what hurts is there's a lot of sites that pay writers with real expertise and they're producing fairly good content, but they're not showing it on the page. It just looks like a wall of text. There's nothing aside from that wall of text as a user, those emotional experiences also sort of resonate. There's nothing, I really have to dig in and read this content to understand that it's unique and valuable. And really, I think sometimes you have to cheat a little bit and jump out with, key points of this post. Here are some pictures we took just for you. Here's a video we shot. Here's all the extra things we did around this to show it. Just don't give me a wall of text, which a lot of sites are doing. And it's great content and they spent money and effort and time on it, but they need to show it to me.
Is having the author say at the top of that page with their credentials, PhD, MD, etc., whatever, is that enough to show you as a quality rater that there is expertise behind the page?
Sometimes. I mean, I'm a big fan of putting an author picture on there. A quality rater will generally look at your about page. They'll generally look at your reviews. They'll look and see if you have an editorial policy. They might look at your social profiles, your LinkedIn, all of those things, build a complete picture. Is there a Wikipedia page about you? I don't think just slapping an author profile is enough, but it definitely, for me personally, it definitely helps when I see those things. I've tried some of these experiments on my own site. After I learned a lot of these lessons, I'm like, if someone goes to my site, Zippy, do they understand that we're an authority on SEO? And I'm looking at myself, I'm like, I'm not sure they do. I mean, are our logo just says Zippy. There's why should anybody trust us about SEO? So I started playing with some of these things on my own website. I changed my logo from Zippy to Zippy SEO. I changed a lot of my navigation to explain why we talk about SEO. I put a box on each of my posts explaining why we're authorities on SEO, who I am, and things like that. And after I did these things, I did see a modest boost, in traffic and engagement. I'm not sure it was a whole lot, but even as Google says, what a site says about itself is a start. I think of what you say as yourself as internal linking. Google will trust your internal linking, but they trust external links a little bit more. So I think those author boxes are a good place to start, but they're not necessarily going to solve your problem.
Do you ever go as far as searching the author's name in Google just to see if this person's real, to see if they do have the expertise should they claim?
Yeah, like I was looking at some sites today on Twitter. We did a 30-minute site review, and some of the authors, you'd go to their social media profiles and they're, medical user 77843 with 0 followers. They obviously look like fake profiles, and that's not helping you out at all. So I think it helps to, the more you can do with real users and connecting those real users and showing your expertise, it helps. It may not solve your problem again, because it's kind of like internal linking. What others say about you is more important than what you say about yourself, but it's a start. It's a start.
Perfect. Okay, and we talked about stock images. This is always debated around various SEO niche site circles. Stock images or no stock images? You mentioned at the beginning, okay, stock images may represent that you're not putting as much effort or originality into the post, but how do you tell if it's a stock image? And two, is it always there black and white, or is there more nuance to it?
Yeah, like everything, there's always nuance. So let me dissect that a little bit. I want to make sure people don't think I'm saying that stock images are a negative factor. I don't think they are at all. I think stock images are a neutral factor. But if you're only using stock images, and when I'm looking at the site, I'm not seeing the extra effort put in. Like when I'm shopping, I do a lot of shopping for vitamins and supplements.
Oh, perfect. You might have come to my site.
Yeah. All right. I like, when I'm shopping for, supplements, I like to see every image of the bottle. I want to be able to read the label. I don't want just a stock image pulled off the manufacturer's website that shows me one image, things like that. I like to see that you put some effort into this and you're providing me all the information I need. So I don't want to say stock images are a negative ranking factor. I don't think that at all. It's just I'm looking for something else. And I think Google's looking for something else too. And I think most users are. To answer your other question, how do you tell if it's a stock image? You can't, but you're just kind of guessing. Like, does this look like, is there anything unique about this image that I probably can find on the internet anywhere? I just like to see the extra effort put in.
Do you ever reverse image search the stock image to see what other, like if it's plastered all over the internet?
Nah. Yeah. I want to go that far. I'm just like, I think that the question is, how much value am I getting out of the images that you're showing me? And I think in some cases, stock images are fine, especially on news sites and, where they just have a vast library of images they're always using all the time. But how helpful is this image for the user? I work with some travel sites sometimes. I'm a big fan of, custom maps, custom graphics, Here's my biggest pet peeve. People pay a lot for writers. I wish they paid equally for, custom graphics and videos.
Oh, I love that. But on the same topic of images and photos, so you can opt in on most themes to have the featured image on the post at the top, or remove the featured image completely. Is photos above the fold, or these featured images bad for user experience? Since if they click on an image, a post, they're going to go straight past that image, right? So is that something that plays a part?
That's a really good question. Ross Hudgens, I don't know if your audience knows who we are, runs Siege Media. I'm actually wearing a Siege Media t-shirt today. Not a paid endorsement. He just gave me a free t-shirt. But he recently ran a experiment that he published recently where they removed the hero image, the big hero image at the top of the post.
Yep.
And they increased traffic like 12%. And that's a pretty consistent result that you see in a lot of experiments. I'm running some experiments myself right now, removing the hero image. I don't think there's a tried and fast rule. One thing that's in the quality rater guidelines that a lot of people miss is the quality of the headline. And I go to a lot of sites, and just as a user, where the headline, especially on mobile, is really tiny, maybe there's ads or other things, and the headline doesn't jump out at you. And that's one of the first things that users are going to look at. So I always advise putting the headline at the top, not a featured image above the headline, but headline first. Biggest thing on the page that users can see and read and understand that this post is relevant to them. And that's the most important thing. At whether or not you should use a featured image, I think that's a case-by-case basis.
This might be a little outside the quality rater, but on those headlines, I'm seeing a little more, I guess you could say, YouTube clickbaity style headlines in the SERPs versus, say, the exact match keyword in there. So, for example, I was searching something, let's just say it was best vacuum cleaners, and you obviously have best vacuum cleaners ranking, but the number one for this one was, I bought the 10 most popular vacuum cleaners on Amazon. Here's my review. And that was ranking number one. Are you seeing anything similar like that?
Well, in different verticals. And yeah, I think that's a great headline, actually, especially when people are looking for, when Google is promoting personal experience and, helpful content. That sounds like a really good headline to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm testing some of that myself, but I'm just not sure, because obviously it doesn't have the exact match, maybe best vacuum cleaner you want at the beginning of that title tag in H1. But I don't know if Google's liking it, it might be something to look at down the road. But some more questions on maybe some of this quality rating stuff. I've got some from some people here. But does the publish date or update basically account for anything, or update date account for anything within on the page? Like if the post is really old, does that make a negative view in your eyes or anything like that?
Yeah. This question comes up all the time, and it has been for, 10 years or more. In general, fresher content tends to do better. I don't think it's a deal breaker, except for some queries. Like if you're looking for the latest tax regulations or mortgage rates or movie reviews, of course, a fresh date's going to be much, much more important. So it's very, very query dependent. You have to look at, to know how fresh your content should be, you generally have to Google your keywords and look at the top 10 ranking results and see how fresh everything else is. But my advice to everybody is always, don't just change the date on your post, actually update your content. There's a few things, I wrote about this years ago, and I don't think Google has changed much, that when there's so many freshness factors, including the updates that you recently made, how frequently you make those updates, the freshness of the links pointing at your site, the engagement signals can be a freshness factor. But yeah, generally updating your content more often is generally associated with better rankings. So I wouldn't just slap a date on there. I would actually go through and make changes and try to make sure everything is actually fresh. But it's generally a sign of attention.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, the funny thing is, updating the content is probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
And everything you do on your website, publishing new content, sweet, that's easy. But going back and continue updating.
Yeah. Everybody got rid of comments. That used to be a fairly solid freshness signal when people are commenting frequently, but then eventually people stop commenting and your content looks really stale when you have comments up and the last comment is 7 years ago. You're like, this post is a banana.
Do you recommend people turn on comments?
I've been wanting to turn comments on my own blog.
Tell you, but there's no way I'm doing it.
But man, it's kind of horrible. Brian Dean of Backlinko, sold the site to SEMrush. He had comments turned on every post and he would answer every comment. And I think there's something to that. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of spam. And I think it only makes sense if you're a high traffic website and can generate good content. If you're low traffic and you're generating nothing every few months and it's all spam, I don't think it's worth it. But if you have the time and resources, I think it's probably a good thing.
Interesting. What about forums then? Because forums seem to get a pretty good boost this recent update. Is that something you would potentially consider?
Yeah, I mean, same thing, right? Forums are awesome, but mostly filled with spam these days, unless you're Reddit. But man, if you can moderate it, if you can have that great content, it's worth it. It's just the bar is raised. It's so very, very hard to do because as soon as your forum becomes popular, it starts getting spammed and it becomes a moderation nightmare. So it's just cost benefit. Yeah. But I love, you know what I love is like, I wear a Garmin watch.
Mm-hmm.
I love it, love running, and going to like a Garmin forum where they're talking about, different technical issues or how user questions about how Garmin measures heart rate and real users are weighing in. Those forums are gold, but they take a lot of work on the Garmin folks side to moderate. But man, great content and free content.
Yep, for sure. All right, I've got some more for you. I've actually got some from Gareth here too. I'll come back to these other ones, but I'm going to hit Gareth's questions first because they're related to kind of what we're talking about. But the recent helpful content update influence the change in exact match in the SERP. So as I mentioned before, kind of about that vacuum cleaner example. So he's given the example, for example, can dogs eat chocolate? It used to be like 10 blue links of exact match. Can dogs eat chocolate all the way down? Now it's kind of changed. And he's asking, was that the search quality team or is it a change in the exact match in the SERPs?
Yeah, good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think it kind of goes back to how Google makes updates in general and where quality raters come in, where the search team comes in. And my general understanding of it is, Google comes up with some changes they'd like to see. It can be like a 1 or 1.5 year process where Google comes up with some changes they want to see. They start looking at factors they can measure. They release a new quality rater guidelines that give quality raters like myself some time to train up and several months to create data sets reviewing sites. Then they pump those data sets back into the machine learning algorithms. They fine tune the dials and then they release. And some things like, exact match can be intentional, by the search teams, and others can just be a byproduct of the machine learning. And most algorithm updates are kind of a mixture of the two, where they don't necessarily manually turn all the dials, but they like these results, and that's just something that happened. So not sure. It's a good question.
Okay. And regarding when you're doing these quality ratings, do you have like websites that you use as benchmarks as the one would be considered quote unquote almost like the perfect site for these certain criteria?
Well, to a degree, yes. And these are available in the quality rater guidelines where they give examples of highest quality, high quality, medium, low quality, and sites. And there are certain sites like, Wikipedia or Amazon that are consistently rated high quality or, extremely high quality. But it's also query dependent. If a site has a great reputation or they're very well known, such as Amazon, even though they don't always necessarily have a good reputation, they usually get very high quality scores based on that because they just offer good experiences. But yeah, to simply answer your question, yeah, Quality Rater Guidelines offers very concrete examples of each kind of site. And when you go through your training, you get a lot more examples too.
It sounds like then it's almost like the bigger the brand, the more quality it's given. So even if it's, for example, I mean, I can give a shit ton of examples within fitness that would be dog shit content, like factually wrong, but the big brands are well known, so I guess they're given the pass.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That if it's a well-known site, that if you've heard of the site before you even see it, that's going to influence ideas of quality. And in the real world, it's going to have a lot of links. It's going to have a lot of authority and press mentions. So yeah, it works that way in quality rating too.
Okay, that's good to know.
Which I kind of hate. I hate giving Amazon a high score.
Yeah, with all the stories that came out about them and their drivers and stuff. It's like, whoa. But the problem is in the States, like, it's the most convenient, easiest thing to use to get anything you need. Like there's the alternative either takes you going somewhere or trying to find something where you don't know if there's good reviews, etc. It doesn't get shipped to your house. Like the barriers to entry to go somewhere else is so high versus having Amazon. So it's almost like they've cornered that market.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That doesn't mean there's always two jobs to a quality rater's job. It's website quality and needs met is the other. And just because Amazon, has high quality doesn't always mean it's going to meet the needs of every query. So you're going to have a really high quality score and a low needs met or relevant score, and you're not going to rank very well for those things.
Okay. All right. So coming back to quality rating, Gareth just keeps sending me more and more questions. You should just, Gareth, I'm pretty sure you're in this podcast. You can just come in and ask some of these.
Yeah, I saw him for a second, then he
Yeah, he's going to be doing something else. Okay, here's a good one that I quite like. So when you go on a site, does the average quality rater go to the same lengths as you since you have a strong SEO background?
That's a really interesting question. Let me answer that two ways. One, I thought this job was going to be a breeze because I've done SEO for, so many years. And I went through the qualifying phases. I got to the testing phase. I didn't study because I've read the quality rater guidelines, and I failed my second test. And they're like, oh, crap. It was hard. It took me like 3 hours, and I failed.
Oh, my God.
And I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to have to study. So I took a week, went through all their examples, and they gave me, and the training material is so much more extensive than the actual quality rater guidelines. And they expect you to score your queries and your sites within a very fine range. So there is a right answer for everything that you score, because lots of raters are getting the same evaluations, and you need to fall within a certain area, if not. So I had to go through, I had to study, and it was harder. I had to get rid of a lot of my SEO biases too, and just go by the quality rater guidelines and things they think are important. And what's interesting is there are sentences in the quality rater guidelines that maybe SEOs just breeze over, but become very important when you're actually doing the job. They're like, you have to focus on these things. And so that was a wake-up call. I've been rambling on so much, I forgot what the question was.
No, it's all good. You pretty much answered. You're basically, I asked if the average rater goes to the same length as you.
The second part of that answer is it's a tedious job. I log in just enough hours not to get fired because it's kind of interesting, which is not very much. I keep thinking they're going to fire me any day now. And after this interview, maybe they will fire me. But it's a tedious job, and it doesn't pay very well. But yet you have to be kind of highly educated to do it. So you have a timer running. You're really just trying to get through the results, get through the tasks. So you're not spending a lot of time on each one. You're just kind of going through it quickly, and you sort of get used to it, and it becomes very mechanical Turk after a while.
Gotcha. Sure. Here's another question from him. Should we shit ourselves if we see referral traffic from Raterhub in our Google Analytics? Because some say it's a sign that you'll see a drop in traffic.
Yeah. So let me address that from a 1,000-foot view.
Perfect.
Do quality raters like myself directly influence traffic? No. Absolutely not. Google says that. It's in all their documents. Is quality rater data used to train machine learning algorithms? Yes, that's also stated in Google documents. So let's put it this way. If a quality rater comes to your site, or several quality raters come to your site, because that's often the case. If you see one, you generally see a few because they give the same problems to people. And your site rates lowly, rates poor, and that data is used to train machine learning algorithms that will later grade your site. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that your traffic's going to drop if your site is used an example of a bad site in a machine learning algorithm. So correlation is not causation, but if your site is great and your site is, scored highly, and that's used for machine learning training, that's the opposite. So I wouldn't say that it's a bad sign if a quality rater visits your site, unless your site's actually bad. So then you might be scared a little bit.
On the quality role, further down the quality rate questions. So a lot of sites will have the featured on, as seen on, they'll have logos of all the big sites that they have on there. How do you tell if it's real or not? Do you care? Does it matter?
God, that's a good question, because this just happened this morning. Someone asked me to look at a site, and it had all these logos, of these huge sites. And I'm thinking, there is no way that's real. No way. It looked fake. And this was one of those sites where the authors had no social media. It was the same site I was talking about earlier. No followers on social media. It just looked fake. I don't think that would ding you too much, but this site had a lack of real world signals. When I Googled reviews of the site, there weren't a lot out there. And that's what really counts. So I doubt putting those fake logos are really going to hurt you. But to me, it kind of looked a little spammy. They look like, and I'm sure that users are sensing that too. So I doubt it's a huge red flag, but you really want to back it up with those real world signals.
So when you mentioned, obviously, you're looking for reviews of the site. By reviews, do you mean like mentions? Or you...
Yeah.
Okay.
So my favorite thing to do, they train you in the Quality Rater guidelines to search for reviews about the site, doing a site search, minus exclude results, see what the site says about this site. One of the favorite things I like to do is Google the site, hit those 3 dots on the right-hand side and see more about this site. And that will show you reviews, mentions, all sorts of things. That's usually the gold standard to see what other sites are saying about the site. Funny enough, sites with affiliate programs, site that use Trustpilot a lot, they usually have a lot of, positive mentions, but, Google's looking at all of it. So what you're seeing other sites say about you is just a proxy for what Google can see, but it's usually a good starting point.
What if these mentions are mostly negative? Does that play into account? So, for example, 1-star reviews on Trustpilot, etc.
Yeah, and what again, just sticking to the quality guidelines, if there's a lot of negative reviews, that plays into the quality score. If there's a handful of negative reviews, not so much. And going back to your brand question, if it's a big brand like Amazon, they may have millions of, negative reviews out there, but they're such a big site and a trusted authority in their space, not going to make a difference at all.
It's funny. It's basically just running down the whole parasite road, like all these massive parasites that just rank for anything and everything. It doesn't matter just because they're big brands, they can get away with whatever. And
yeah, we could have a whole conversation about parasite SEO, what's going on with parasite SEO? No, I'm the worst person in the world to talk about it.
Do you think it'll ever change?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what niches you guys work in, but, when I'm cruising around the internet and I see Times of India, competitive queries, I'm like, really? Really? And it's a problem, and I think Google will deal with it. But, there's always a 1 to 2 year lag with these things. So,
yeah, because the issue, I talk to Gareth about this sometimes as well, but the issue with, if Google goes to deal with it algorithmically, they're going to have to devalue something like links, right? To be able to bring something like that down. Or is there another way they could go about it? Because if they devalue links, then you kind of, I guess you kind of screw up the whole algorithm doing something like that.
Yeah, they could devalue links. I have a feeling it'll be more of a Panda-esque content thing where they look at these, parasite sites as subfolders. If you have a lot of guest posts on these certain URL structures, they'll devalue the whole folders. I suspect something like that will happen. And I suspect it will happen, in the next 6 to 12 months. We'll see another big update that really, some of these parasite sites have already been hit. I think we'll see core updates continue to hammer away at them until they feel they've solved the problem.
No, that's a big update for everyone listening. Potentially parasites going. I think a lot of people listening will probably be happy about it.
Well, it works right now. It's the golden age of parasite SEO. So
exactly,
yeah, keep at it.
Yeah, so there'll be people happy who aren't in Parasite who are trying to rank, and there's going to be potentially some unhappy people who are leveraging Parasite right now with that. But so just some on-page stuff here. The citing sources. Is there a best way to do that?
I don't think so. I'm a huge fan of external linking, and I always have been. And I think there's, every study we've done when I was at Moz and, other places on the internet, external linking is always associated with higher ranking. And I don't know if there's a direct ranking factor cause to that, but I've always been of the mindset that, it's better to link out than to have people go back to Google and perform another search. I'd rather be my own Google where people can find their own sources, even if they're leaving my site. It was when I worked for Moz, it was so hard for me when I was, publishing a post to link to Ahrefs, to link to SEMrush, but we always did it. We did it every single time because we wanted to have that authority of being the expert, non-biased expert on everything. And we ranked very well, for years. And I'd have to put my foot down and say, yes, we're linking to Ahrefs, even though there are competitors. We'll link to them at the bottom, but we'll still link to them.
You're a better man than me.
To answer your question, I don't have any best practices for citing sources. but I'm a huge fan of linking out. So enough said on that.
Not perfect. Yeah. I don't link to competitors. I just can't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, it's hard, especially if you don't like them.
Yeah, exactly. And links are like the currency of the internet, right? Why am I going to give away free stuff? But I do see my pages that rank well because a lot of my stuff I'll link out to a lot of Google Scholar research journal articles for a lot of stuff, and I find a lot of that stuff ranks really well. So there's something to it, but I can't bring myself to link to someone else's content.
Especially and it's going to vary depending on your niche. When at Moz, Ahrefs actually was an authority. SEMrush was an authority. They were good sites. If you're selling protein powder and you're not going to link to your Joe Blow supplement store, who's also selling unless they have a really excellent article, and then maybe you just find a way to make that article your own, and that's your content strategy.
I'd link to mention.
Yeah.
Another question along this is, I don't know if this is more quality rate or more just search in general, but is bounce rate still a useful metric for page engagement?
Yeah, I love bounce rate for whatever it's worth. I think it's an imperfect metric, but because there's really no correlation between bounce rate and ranking or time on site and ranking. But I like to use all those engagement metrics as a proxy to task completion, which I think is a ranking factor. Am I the last site when a user is on Google and they're looking through different search results? Am I the last site that they clicked on before they got their answer? And that's what I mean by task completion. That's what I like to measure. So bounce rate is in GA4. It's hard to get to. They kind of hide it, but you can customize your reports to show bounce rate. GA4 prioritizes engage time as an engagement metric, which I also like. But I like looking at these metrics, but I like to improve these metrics on every site that I work on. But I think it's dangerous when you start using them as a direct correlation to ranking factor because they're so messy. Google has spent millions of dollars and lots of patents, and it's funny because I looked into this. A lot of the people who wrote Google's patents on user clicks are now at the very top of the organization, vice president of search, head of research, all these people. I think it's ridiculous to think that Google doesn't use, click data to influence rankings because they have some of the top minds in the world working on these things. It's just very hard for us mortals to figure out how they're doing it. And they're definitely not using bounce rate, but they're using things that are far more sophisticated.
Yeah. Your time, I guess, time to complete, or the completion thing that you mentioned there.
Task completion.
Task completion, that's the one. That sounds like it would be a good metric, but when you say task completion, it sounds like then time on page or engaged time on page doesn't really matter.
Well, it's query dependent, right? So the Google patents that I've read, they're looking at these metrics. They're looking at long clicks, first clicks, last clicks, and all the different noise in the SERPs. They do matter. It's just really hard to correlate those with actual rankings. But I would say if you have a feature on your site, you improve your content, and you see your bounce rate go down, you see your time in site go up, you see the number of pages visited go up, those often correlate with higher rankings. Those are generally a win. So absolutely do those things. But it's just, you can't, as an SEO professional, I can't go to clients in the public and say time on site's a ranking factor. It's not. It's more complicated than that, but you should improve those things always.
Yeah. I guess from your analysis from the recent helpful content and just analysis in general, what's the biggest lever that no one's talking about over the last few updates that people could be pulling now?
That is a great question. So we talked about ads, which no one wants to hear. So many sites with heavy ads that interfere with the main content were hit in the latest HCU update. This is something I'm preparing for a future presentation, but when I'm looking at a site as a quality rater, and I don't want to say this is gospel, but I'm only looking at it for a very short time. And I only have a very brief window to judge if your site is an expert or you have an authority on what you're talking about. And I think the places where you can show that expertise in your logo, in your navigation links? What do your navigation links say about you? Are they all about, buy now, pricing, whatever? Or are you talking about your resource pages where you talk about your medical expertise, things that are helpful to users? What's in your footer? What are the links in your footer to show your expertise, talking about your topic authority, your topic knowledge? You only have a few seconds to communicate this to a user. Give it the blink test. Look at your phone on mobile? Does it look like an authority on what you're talking about? Or am I just being assaulted with buy now buttons, a video pop-up that auto loads, discount coupons, things like that? So the sites that I'm seeing hit by HCU, they're not taking advantage of those things, and they're kind of assaulting me with money-making opportunities for the site.
So you would recommend that people who are running display ads to turn their settings from maximum revenue to like balanced or...
Yeah, if they're, especially if they were hit. I personally, I don't trust the media companies, Mediavine or AdThrive. I don't trust them to act in the best interest of the sites that they're representing. I think they all claim, we're partners with Google, they're partners with the ad side. And if you've been watching, any of the antitrust trials that's currently taking place, the ad side is very different from the search side. And within Google, they call it church and state, and they take that separation pretty seriously. So any ad company that says they are in compliance with Google, they're talking about the ad side, and the ad side, their behavior is not looking good in these antitrust trials. They are not looking out for the interest of publishers, and publishers have to look out for themselves. So if you were hit by HCU and you're running ads by any of these major networks, I think it's worth looking and taking control of your own settings and maybe pulling some of those back, especially auto-loading videos, especially the ads at the very top of the page. I think ads are fine. Look at Healthline or WebMD. They run a ton of ads, but they do it in a streamlined experience. You can clearly separate the ads from the main content, but they have a ton of ads and they're making millions on them. Ads are not the problem. How you present the ads are. I think Google is tightening the screws a little bit.
So,
and I know you've done some. Oh no, you go on, Gareth.
Gareth, I want something from Gareth.
Sorry, earlier on my son just bombed in the room. That's why I was like, oh crap. That's why I just bailed out. So, no, what I was going to say was basically, I agree 100% with what you've been saying. It's really interesting so far, and I'm sorry about joining so late on, but use a quality rate guideline or a Google quality rate. Like, where are you seeing the major difference when you go onto a general website and an e-commerce store? Because I have an e-commerce, quite a few e-commerce, and one in particular has just gone off to the races. And it has been visited by Raterhub quite a lot. And it's just literally it's great. I'm not complaining whatsoever, but it's James knows what one I'm on about.
Will you share the site with me after we talk?
Oh, it's boydhampers.com.
Dude, okay. This is a setup, bar. You're falling for it.
I don't mind. Go for it.
You called it Boyd's Hampers?
So you Americans, James, I don't know what it's like in New Zealand, but we tend to put our clothes in a laundry basket, but like in America they call it a hamper.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Boyd, yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm looking at the site right now. Clean, professional design.
Wow, there you go, James.
It looks.
Wouldn't it be awkward if you did right here on the podcast?
It's a beautiful site. I love the big images. Everybody go to boydshampers.com. The product descriptions are good. The reviews are nice. I don't know if they're real reviews, but they look great. So
they are real. There's some awful ones.
Yeah. Also, I'm looking at your navigation. I look at the site and I know instantly it's about hampers. It's in your title. It's in your logo. It's in all your navigation links. You have hampers for every occasion. You look like a site. If I was buying hampers or gift baskets or whatever, this looks like a site that I would go to. You've got excellent Trustpilot score, tons of information about the site, press office, refunds, news and updates, our story. You got a page about your team. Yeah, this is a high quality site. by any stretch of the imagination.
We kind of game it a bit where we're like, we took one of our food blogs and just whacked it onto it, because I kind of was looking at what's coming down the line is basically, obviously, if you're not going to be doing social media, I was just like, let's just, either sell it or just merge it. So I thought merge it. So it's more like the blog content is just gone off it's just gone crazy.
Huh. That's excellent. Yeah, I think this is a great site. So this is an example of a site that's doing stuff right.
You mentioned, Cyrus, about the reviews. You're asking if they were real. Is that something you're looking at on stores, whether the reviews are real or not? Is there a way you can tell, or is it just kind of like a general gut feeling?
Yeah, it's more of a gut feeling. Google has a lot of patents around detecting, fake reviews, real reviews around the web. They probably have the most sophisticated system in the world. So it's more of just a gut feeling. If everybody's just, when you go on Amazon or other sites and everybody's like, this is the greatest, it's all caps, and you just like, there's no way these reviews are real. This hamper changed my life. No, it's not. But so I don't think it's a hard ranking factor, but it's something to consider.
Nice. I know you've done a fair bit of, I think it was on your Twitter, around SGE, a little bit of research into getting in there. Do you want to maybe dive into what you have found so far? Is there anything that we can do as publishers to try optimize for it?
Yeah, I have some interesting thoughts on, well, I don't know if they're interesting to me. My thoughts are just interesting to me all the time. So Mike King just came out with a huge SGE post talking about who's going to be at risk. I think the general understanding or the general prediction among the industry that SGE will reduce publisher clicks. We don't know how much. I don't think it's a doomsday scenario. So I've done some experiments where I've tried to rank for things in SGE that I wasn't ranking for. And it's fairly easy to do. It's a lot like optimizing for featured snippets. You see what they're generating in the snippet itself. You create some content with a header or, a single sentence, and you write your answer beneath that. I found that bolding your text that you want to get in the SGE answer helps a lot, but it was fairly easy, and I was ranking within days. Here's the funny thing about SGE right now, though. Right now, SGE is generating new answers almost every time that you type a question. It's taking like 5 to 7 seconds for personalized queries. I think we're going to see Google's. So even if you rank in SGE right now, you may not rank for somebody else in a different region, somebody else later in that day, because they're just regenerating those all over and over again. I think we're going to see Google start caching SGE answers for a number of top queries, and those rankings are going to become much more stable. And so right now, ranking in SGE has not generated me any additional meaningful traffic because it's only rolled out to a certain number of users and it's really small adoption. I think in the future, it's going to become more important as they start caching answers and they become much more stable. And those techniques we're going to see people start writing blog posts about how to rank in SGE and all that. So right now, I wouldn't worry about it too much, but do what you do for featured snippets and wait for things to become a little more stable. I think grabbing those spots are going to become a little easier.
Is there a potential time in the future where Google may reduce the size of SGE or get rid of it altogether, or it's here to stay regardless?
I think it's here to stay. I think we're going to see it evolve a lot in the next year. I'm not silly enough to make any predictions about SGE because I think it's so fluid, and I think the technology they're building under the hood is evolving so rapidly. I don't think SGE is that great. I think they're probably disappointed by some of the results that they've seen rolled out so far, especially the fact that in the newest versions, they're hiding it a little bit, and you have to click to expand. Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with SGE, but I think we're going to see more AI incorporated into search results, and it's going to become more conversational. Right now, SGE is just a summary engine, and I don't think it's that great. I actually prefer, as a user, I usually prefer the 10 blue links, but maybe that's just me. Not sure what's going to happen.
How do you think, I haven't been following the antitrust trials too closely, but how do you think the antitrust trials are going to influence that? Because obviously with SGE, you're just taking publishers' content, right? A lot of it's word for word too. So do you think there's going to be potentially some kind of change there?
So That's an excellent question. I don't think the current antitrust trials are going to affect that too much. I think there are some separate lawsuits that may have a bigger impact. The antitrust trials are interesting because there could be some huge implications from these antitrust trials. Google could lose its default status on iOS, which could affect 30% of the market. Google could may be forced to spin off Chrome, which would also be huge. There's been a lot of privacy around the trial, so I don't think a lot of the industry is paying attention to it, but it could blow up in Google's face. We just don't know yet. It's a huge trial with huge implications, and just like, Microsoft 20 some odd years ago, it could really profoundly change the industry. We just don't know. We just don't know at this point.
I think someone needs to kind of look into what senators own shares in Alphabet.
Yeah. Good question.
That's a digital PR campaign right there.
Oh, but then you might get sued, Gareth.
Nah. They'll not get much.
That'd be a good piece. Yeah. That'd be a good piece. Yeah.
That's
I
one
like
for
that.
you, Cyrus.
Yeah. Thanks. They all do.
I know, Cyrus, you on each pursuit list, you did a big internal link case study. Do you want to maybe quickly just go over the findings of that? And has anything changed now since you did that study in terms of your findings?
Yeah, so I haven't updated the case study. So we sold software for a while. I actually had to sell that to my partner. That's a whole nother story, which we won't get into. But thanks to that, we had access to a lot of anonymous Google Search Console data for, hundreds of sites and millions of pages and links. So I'm like, hey, great, let's do a correlation study. And so we studied internal linking. And basically what we found was, no surprise, that pages with more internal links tended to get more traffic. The funny thing was, it wasn't a hugely strong relationship. It was a good relationship, but it wasn't hugely strong. And the relationship only went up to about 10 links. So once you had 10 internal links for your page, we weren't going to see much more benefit. But then we looked at unique links, meaning different anchor text. So when we looked at that, it didn't stop at 10 links. It just kept going up and up and up and up and up. It was one of the most strongest correlations I've ever seen in all my years of doing SEO correlation studies. We ran the data so many different ways because I swore we had made a mistake, and it just kept coming back as a very strong relationship. And what the data was telling us, it's not the number of internal links to a page that matter. It's the number of different internal links. So a site-wide link with the same anchor text on every page is going to have the least amount of power according to our study, according to our data. But if you vary the link on each blog post, link with different anchor text, sometimes optimized anchor text, sometimes not optimized anchor text, it didn't really matter. Those pages had the most traffic of anything in our data set. And that was a really surprising revelation to me. And I think what's going on is, SEOs understand the idea of canonicalization. I think what Google does is sort of canonicalize, links that have the same anchor text. So if you're selling, protein powder, if you link to your page every time protein powder site-wide, you have 1,000 links on your site that all say protein powder. Google isn't saying, wow, he has 1,000 links and he has 1,000 anchor texts that say protein powder. This site was really about protein powder. No, they're saying you have 1,000 links passing, a little bit of page rank, but you only have one anchor text. And that's what's going on. So I think Google canonicalizes those anchor text signals. Sorry, I drone on a lot. That's my 10-minute TED talk on internal anchor text. Thank you for coming.
That's perfect. I like it. So you mentioned about varying the anchor text. You exact match, protein powder. A lot of people will use partial matches and maybe along with like whey protein, etc. But would you ever use completely random ones like click here or read this?
Yeah, I would, especially if you're already over-optimized with your anchor text. There's a lot of debate if Google has over-optimization algorithms, but I think, if you're a large site with a lot of authority, you can get away with a lot. If you're a small site, I think experience shows, without getting into actual Google anchor text ranking factors, I think experience shows vary your anchor text, not over-optimizing them is usually a smart strategy. I like to use variations of, my main keywords. I like to pad my anchor text with words before and after, so I'm not using the same thing. I'm de-optimizing all my anchor text, but I'm throwing a lot of it at each page.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I want to rewind. No, I was saying it was really good, but I was going to say, so do you have, just back to the quality side, because I forgot to send it, it failed my internet. Do you think there's a variance between local and obviously what should be applied locally for a local business and what should be applied to, say, best credit cards? Because that's two different sort of, not forget about keyword difficulty, but it's like totally different expectancy, because obviously a local business doesn't have the same resources as what maybe NerdWallet has and vice versa. Is there anything in the guidelines for you guys looking at, say, in Austin for a carpet cleaning company?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. So, and I think I can say this without spilling any secrets, because I think that, I think things have been posted like this before. But when your quality rater, every time a quality rater gets a query, they get the user location. So you get the query, you get the keyword that they're searching for, and you get where that user is located, and you just assume unless otherwise stated, that they're on a mobile device. So you have to rate the needs met based on the user location. And sometimes it's important, and sometimes it's not important. If you're looking for national mortgage rates, it's not important. But if you're looking for a store in the area and all that, that goes into the rating. So there is a difference, and there are different standards because of that, if there's local intent in the query. On a broader sense, a lot of these local businesses want to compete with the national brands, and they want to compete with them on a national level. I always, like if you're a local furniture store, I always think it's funny that, your local furniture store will be publishing articles about furniture, how to pick furniture meant for an international audience. That's hard to do. If you can succeed with it, great, do it. But it's not always worth the effort, because it's not going to help you that much in your local area. But yeah, great question. It does make a difference. I can't tell you how in every circumstance.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's good to know for your local projects.
I hope it's not a secret, but yes.
Spilled the beans now, so it's too late. Gareth, is there anything else you wanted to ask before I wrap this up?
No, that was really the sort of the golden nugget. I was kind of expecting that was going to come out of your mouth. It's because it is kind of like such like a total, complete and utterly different intent and user that's going to be looking at it, because it's kind of, we see it like James and I are partnering on something, and it's like, you go into the SERPs and you're like, some of these sites don't deserve to rank here, but at the same stage, they probably actually service the intent very well.
Yeah, possibly. It's funny. I think there's one thing I want to say that's not related to your question, because on social media, I'm being hammered by people that have been hit by recent Google updates, and they always want to compare themselves to their competitors, or they find examples of sites that are doing things worse than them and are ranking. And my advice to them is, great, but Google is an imperfect system, and they maybe that site has terrible ads, but they're doing something else right that you can't see, or Google just screwed up. We need to take all advice with a grain of salt, that Google is ranking billions of pages directionally, and humans make mistakes. Algorithms are not finely tuned as you want. You're going to find exceptions to every rule out there. Don't look at the sites that are worse than you as an example for anything, because that's not going to help you. Anyway, sorry. That's me on my soapbox.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I actually have one more question for you, Cyrus. Like, this just popped up here, and I just found it now. It just came through before, but would there be any on-page benefit for a helpful video higher up than scrolling twice to find it versus load on the page above the fold, bearing in mind that load speed is a ranking factor?
That's a really good question. I think there are some technical answers to this that I am not I'm not a page speed expert by any means, but I think if you can defer things so you're not delaying page load. But I think videos higher up from a user experience are great. I'm hating autoplay videos that you scroll down and they stay on your screen and they cover everything as you scroll. I absolutely hate those. I don't like auto-playing videos at all, and I think they're a terrible user experience. But generally, I love video content, and especially, custom boutique video content that, host on YouTube or whatever is great. And it shows me you put effort in. It shows me you put originality into it. We had a presentation in MozCon. I'm trying to think who did this. I think it was Crystal Carter of Wix. She had a great MozCon presentation showing that, 90% of sites are not utilizing correct video markup or leveraging all the SEO benefits of, recent Google updates of what you can do with video. So I'm a huge fan of video. I went off on a tangent there. Yeah. Love video. Just if you autoplay your video, I'm going to come down. I'm going to find you. I'm going to take care of you.
I just got one last one, and then I swear I'm not going to have any more questions for you, Cyrus. But so for the person, because I've only got one site that's been hit, and to be fair, it deserved to be hit. So
good for you for admitting it.
Oh no, it's total garbage. It really is. It's total garbage. I'm big enough to admit it. Like, we're just targeting long tail stuff that worked for years, and now it doesn't work. So whatever. But what I would say is, so say we go and fix it. We take everything you've said on board, and we're like, right, we're getting rid of high density of ads. We're fixing our content. We're taking away boring informational content that doesn't need to be there, and images, etc., etc., etc. And one of the biggest factors is building your brand outside of Google or, on other sites. How long is it going to take before we see this magical recovery?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I've had this conversation with other people, and, I don't know. It's Google's classifier. And what we don't know is if Google's classifier is running continuously, which they've been trending towards that more and more over the years, or if we have to wait till the next update. But Google systems are working very, very fast these days. So I tend to lean towards sooner than later. In the old days, you were hit by Penguin Panda. You'd have to wait for 2 years to recover. You'd be like, I don't have any more employees. I'm broke. Nowadays it's a little faster.
Yeah, it brings back nightmares. Thanks, Cyrus.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like Gareth's nightmare right there. But I've got one more follow-up question for you, Cyrus, on the video thing. How does Google determine if the video is helpful or not? Because I'm assuming there's a quality rater. You can just kind of go watch it or skim through it. But how does Google?
Yeah, interesting question. I'll answer in two. One, quality raters do rate YouTube videos, which I didn't know. You actually have to sit there and watch the video and judge the content.
Really?
But yeah,
and that affects YouTube rankings.
It could. I don't know. As a quality rater, I would not know the answer to that. I don't know. But I assume, it's all machine. Again, this is not an official answer, even as an SEO. But just my own theories is it's all machine learning. I assume they're using user interaction data and, a bunch of machine learning signals that they don't even, Googlers may not be able to explain to you because it's all kind of a black box. So I don't know. That the real answer is the video actually helpful to users? If it's shit, they can probably detect that through their algorithms. If it's good and people are engaging, they're clicking through the video, they're spending a lot of time, that's probably a good sign. That's probably going to be correlated with higher rankings.
Gotcha. Actually, I have one more question for you. I keep coming up with one more question.
Yeah. This is the never-ending series of
pinned into a corner, Cyrus.
Yeah. Tell us about Google Discover, because I get Google Discover traffic. I don't know why. I tend to know what seems to go on Google Discover from one of my sites. A couple of my sites are on Google Discover. They don't get any Google Discover traffic. But is there anything that you've come across that would make optimizing for Google Discover easier, better, anything?
Yeah. Well, the first and really obvious thing that a lot of people miss completely is images. Google Discover is huge on having, a huge image. You can just have it linked in your HTML that's high quality, that describes the post. A lot of people miss that, and they wonder why they're not on Google Discover. The other thing is a headline. Google Discover says they want high quality, non-clickbaity, but in the reality, they love the clickbait stuff. They love the sensational stuff. So those are the two big triggers: a headline that gets clicks and a great image and, a decent publisher reputation, that's an image for generating lots of Google discovered traffic. As for the rest, it's not really something I've studied a lot. Lily Ray is great on Twitter. That's kind of her ground if that's someone you follow.
No, perfect. I think that covers everything here. Cyrus will let you go from the chains and shackles of this podcast. But where can people find you, follow you, and see what you're up to?
Where does anybody find anybody today? Twitter, X is painful. I've been branching out on LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. You just come to zippy.com, a proud partner of Boyd's Hampers. You can find us there, but reach out anytime.
We'll get you one sent over this Christmas, so we will, Cyrus.
All right. So sounds good.
This sounds like buying links.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure.
Just cash.
I'm going to put Boyd's Hamper on my website, as seen on Boyd Hampers, with your logo.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Let's just hope Cyrus doesn't have to quality rate his own website there.
Oh,
But perfect, Cyrus. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all these nuggets, and hopefully the audience got something out of it. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah, lots of fun talking to you guys. Thank you very much.